Welcome, everybody. We're very excited that you're here today and happy December. You are in the Friday convening, our third Friday convening of the Ed Funders Out of School Time Impact Group. So we've got a really interesting panel today, and I'm very excited for this conversation. And so this conversation is connected to some of the work that we're going to be doing in early 2024 and probably throughout 2024 around the power of us. And Rebecca's going to talk about that in a minute. But this is really focused on one component of that work. And this is a component that was led by the National Institute on Out of School Time. And the work is featured in the fall 2023 Afterschool Matters Journal. And it is the Youth Field's workforce survey and the Youth Field's workforce perspectives. And long story short, we want to listen to youth work professionals. And that's what we're going to do today. So we've got a few amazing people, along with Betsy Starr from NIOST, who's going to moderate. And we're just going to have a conversation about what it's like in the youth work field, what supports people have found helpful, what supports are not there, what people's journeys look like, and what they feel needs to happen in order to move forward on a mutual goal that all of us have to build a sustainable and healthy workforce for the youth space. So that's our agenda for today. I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca first to quickly give us a level setting on what's going on with the Power of Us project. And then we're going to turn it over to Betsy, who will bring us through the rest of the time. As usual, questions and comments in the chat, so that, and we can, when the time comes, you can unmute yourself and come on a spotlight if you'd like to ask your own question, or you can ask it in the chat and Betsy will ask it for you, but just use the chat to, really give us your reactions and your questions to the conversation. So Rebecca.
Yeah, thanks, Kathleen. So hi, everyone. Rebecca Goldberg. I co-facilitate the Out of School Time Impact Group with Kathleen. Thrilled to see such a full room here this point in December. So thanks for being with us. As Kathleen mentioned, this is part of our overall continuous focus on supporting the workforce. And many of you have heard about the Power of Us workforce survey in this call and elsewhere. Maybe for me directly, I had the pleasure of working on the project with American Institutes for Research, as well as with NIOST and other partners. And just wanted to give you a quick update on where that data is at and how it relates to what you're going to hear today. So the Power of Us workforce survey, first of all, we want to thank everyone here because I know so many of you had a key part in helping spread the word about the survey, answering it yourselves, sharing it with your staff, and throughout your networks, and we couldn't have done it without you. The report is coming. It'll come out officially in February 2024, so it is not far off on the horizon. And there will be a couple preview sessions, including our next call, January 19th. So just want to say, being part of this community, one of the special things is that we're getting this preview that is before the rest of the country. And so please join us again next month on Friday, January 19th, same time, same place in our call series. And AIR will be joining us to share that survey data. Today, I can share with you that we had a tremendous response. We had over 10,000 responses across the nation with all states represented. So we really have some great information to work with. And it's information that will talk about identity in the field and how people feel about their roles and their jobs. It'll be the findings will be shared under 4 main categories: career pathways, professional learning, professional well-being, and compensation and benefits. So that's how they're kind of parsing out the data. The report will be released with an open source data set. So, that is great for further inquiry. So start to think about the types of questions you have, how you want to see the data disaggregated. If you're a data person yourself, you'll have access to that and can really dig in. If you have evaluation partners, they can work on it. So there'll be lots of ongoing opportunities to dig in even more and extrapolate what we can learn from the data. And then just wanted to share that the release of the data in February will conclude that phase of the work, and then the field is going to determine what's next, because we know there's going to be lots more to learn. The Youth Field Workforce Study is the overarching study. Power of Us survey was one component. And then what you're hearing about today from NIOST is another key component that's really lifting up more of the qualitative data, learning more behind what the survey data responses were telling us and will tell us. So just wanted to give that overview, more to come, and please do make sure you have your calendars marked on January 19th to join us again for more specific data. So thanks for letting me share that. I'm going to hand it over to Betsy Starr from NIOST, who's going to share more about this part of the study.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rebecca and Kathleen, for inviting us here and for giving that overview of the Power of Us and reminding us that that is all coming, which is super exciting. I know we're all eagerly awaiting that data so we can dig in. I mean, I think one of the things that, folks in this field have found is, that there was that real need for that data. And so this is really exciting. There's also, I think, just a collective sense that there's a need to really raise the visibility of this workforce. And so that is one of the things that, NIOST has been working a lot to do, and to really hear from practitioners and listen and, and raise up what those issues are. And so, again, NIOST, we've been doing that in a number of ways. One thing I'll just take a second to plug is Georgia Hall, my colleague who is on this call now, and I recently co-edited a volume for the Out of School Time, Current Issues in Out of School Time book series. And so the recent volume that we just did is The Heartbeat of the Youth Development Field. And it is really full of stories of practitioners, essays that were, first person essays written by practitioners in the field telling, their career journeys and about their, relationships that they've built and the transformation that they have seen and experienced in the field. So definitely check that out, along with the whole book series, which is a really incredible gift to the field. So just plug that too while I'm here. But we are here today to talk about these perspectives, the youth field's workforce perspectives. And so, I'm excited to do that. So just to give you a little bit of background, as Rebecca said, this is part of kind of, working with the Power of Us survey. And the idea was, how can we go a little bit deeper and, explore some of the nuance, really elevate these voices of, people working in the field. And so we decided to do a qualitative component of this research. And so, NIOST kind of spearheaded that effort, and we interviewed about 60 or so people who, had completed the survey and graciously volunteered themselves to do a little bit more and spend some time with us on Zoom, really talking, again, in greater depth about what, what their work is like and what their career journey has been and what are the challenges and what are the real benefits in this field, what's keeping them here, and what are the recommendations for the field. And so, we, learned a lot of things, and we've kind of compiled that and are again really looking to raise the visibility and highlight those voices of people working in the field. And so the Afterschool Matters Journal is where all that is compiled right now. So we have a couple intro pieces and a series of 6 what we ended up calling perspectives from the workforce about, a variety of issues. What were the things that rose to the surface after talking to, all these people in the field. And so, I encourage everybody to take a look and read in more depth what's there. But I'll give you just the high level outline of what you'll find. So there's a perspective in there about community institutions. So talking to people who work in institutions that serve another purpose in the community. So museums, libraries, faith-based institutions, housing organizations, things that, people use in other capacities, but also serve youth. And what is it like to serve youth in a in a program that's housed at a place like that in the community? And so, we really heard loud and clear that folks in these settings do kind of bring dual identities with them and therefore have these really unique strengths that can be leveraged maybe a little bit more than we currently leverage them. There's another piece in there looking specifically about summer. And of course, that workforce shares, their own challenges around recruitment of, a temporary staff and training of a staff like in a short amount of time. And there's often intense hours for the summer. But also, we heard a real opportunity for relationship building in a deeper way, and that staff can bring a lot of creativity and, that there's that flexibility in the summer to do more. So we've really heard a lot about that too. There is a piece in there on compensation, which I think we all know is, an issue. The issue of low pay is a real concern, for sure. So, read more, but it's also, it's not the only thing. It's sort of compensation is necessary, but not sufficient is what we heard. Yeah, and so there's also pieces in there on entry points and career pathways and recommendations. And so some of that stuff I am looking forward to digging into a little bit more with our panelists who are here today. So yeah, without further ado, I'd love to bring on Angel Gomez and Drina Dixon, who have graciously offered to be here today to talk with you. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited that they're both here. I think that they represent both, different parts of the youth fields and do, kind of different kinds of work. And, it's only two people, but I do think that one thing that it raises for me is just the richness of, the opportunity that's out there for the workforce and for youth in the youth fields. And so really excited that you're both here. And so maybe we can start just by you all introducing yourselves and just telling us what your current work is right now with youth, just kind of briefly. So, and then we'll get into it after that. Maybe Angel, do you want to start just saying hello and what you do?
Sure. Thank you, Betsy. Hi, everybody. My name is Angel Gomez. I'm Senior Community Programs Manager for Salt Lake City Corporation, and I run the YouthCity Fairpark program. Our program is fairly new. We opened in 2022, January 2022, so we're coming up on 2 years now. This is my 12th year in after school, and in my current work, we provide services for elementary-aged youth in the northwest quadrant of Salt Lake City. So when kids come to us, we run curriculum. We're teaching healthy lifestyle curriculum, social emotional learning curriculum. We just got done with something that we call Commit to Health, which is focusing on healthy bodies, healthy communities, and healthy minds. So really trying to hit the whole child in our programming and what we do. We function as a pretty traditional after-school program. We receive funding primarily from TANF, along with general fund monies from the city. But yeah, that's kind of a quick snapshot, not getting too into the weeds. So nice to meet you all. I'm very happy to be here.
Perfect. Thanks. And how about you, Gina?
Hi, my name is actually Alexandreena, but everyone can call me Drina for short. And I am the founder and unpaid volunteer executive director for an organization called Chiku, Awali, African Dance, Arts, and Culture. It's located in Rockland County, New York. Specifically, we meet for program services in Spring Valley, which is the area that is, I believe, most in need of our services. We teach African dance. We teach African drumming. We have two enrichment programs for youth. One is the Excellence Club, where we focus on reading and games, STEM projects. The other is a rites of passage program where we teach life skills to the individuals who are enrolled in our program. And we've been doing this for 20 years now. We started in 2003. And it's a work of love for me in particular, because it's not my initial background, but I have been working with youth for more than, when I think about it, I started my career, when you begin to think about it, in corrections. in working for the juvenile courts. So I've been in, direct service for quite a long time.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, my next, question was really for you both about how you got into the field and what that, what some of those entry points were for you, and then, a little bit about your path, but maybe, Dreena, you can just keep going. Tell us more about what that entry was like for you.
Yeah, as I was thinking about it when I sat down, I was like, wait a minute, I didn't start just 20 years ago with Chiku Awali. And I also realized that I didn't start with my service organization, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority. I had been working through that process to provide youth services from the time I became a member, which is in 1966. So I go back a long way. And as I said, I also worked in the juvenile justice system as a probation officer back in the 60s, late 60s, so that you can kind of figure out how old I am by all of that information. But basically, that's how I started out. And Chiku Awali became something that I wanted to do to give back to the community. Being a person in criminal justice system, you realize what youth need. And if you can catch them before they get into difficulty, then, this was a way I felt that I could be of assistance and help.
Yeah, that's great. So one of the things that we really heard a lot, I think, in all the interviews that we did, was this why, kind of like, what is your, like, why do you do this work? And, I guess everybody has a why for whatever they're doing, but I feel like in the youth fields, people, that's a really important piece of it, and kind of keeps people motivated and keeps people in the work potentially. And so I think that you have a really strong why there as well. And so I'm just to clarify for folks, I've heard a lot more about your story, but so now I'm just learning though that you started in juvenile justice and then worked in corrections for a career, and sort of simultaneously did some volunteer work through your sorority and kind of got involved with some African dance and stuff, if I'm remembering correctly. And so then upon your retirement, wanted to kind of like keep that work going. And so then founded your current organization. Is that an accurate summary?
Kind of. I started it 2 years before I retired because I could see the need still. We had been doing programming through the sorority, and I wanted to keep that momentum going. So it was 2 years before I retired and devoted full time to Chiku Awali at that point. So since 2000, I retired in 2005.
Yeah. So that's amazing. Yeah. So Angel, maybe you can share with us a little bit about how you got started in the work, what your that career path has looked like for you, and some of your why.
Sure. Yeah, mine. It's very Dreena, your story and my story, I guess, kind of coincide, but on different sides of maybe the bars. So my career path started when I was 17 years old, and I got in trouble. I had to do community service for the courts. So then I went down to my Boys and Girls Club that was close to me. And I completed service hours through the club. And then right as I was finishing, I turned 18, and I had built relationships with the people that were running that building at the time. And they offered me a job, which was great. I was fresh out of high school, looking for something else. I was working fast food before. So it was new. It was something that I hadn't really experienced before. I didn't grow up going to after school programs. But it wasn't until I had to do service hours and then I was hired on that I started. So I started with the Boys and Girls Club that same year. The following school year, I think it was, we received 21st century funding. And so then we went from having our programs in a clubhouse to an elementary school. And so when you take Boys and Girls Club programming and you transform it to be housed at a school, it's very different. Cultures are different, expectations are different. But I was still young and naive enough that I was able to sort of flip that switch and step in where I was needed. So at 19 years old, I was promoted to be the director of the Midvale Elementary program. And at that point, there was 240 students that were registered in that program, and I had 14 staff members under me. So that was sort of the start of my managing experience in after school. And I stepped in, made a lot of mistakes, learned a lot. And my career with the Boys and Girls Club ended after 5 years. So through that time, I opened another elementary after school program up in a community called Sandy, that's here in Salt Lake County. But then when I left the Boys and Girls Club, I needed to find something more for myself. So I went to school full time after that, and then I worked at a charter school part time because I felt like I had dedicated so much of my early adult years to the club and to working. So then after I had worked at the charter school, there was an opportunity that came up with the Utah After School Network, which is our state network here. And that was for not a school time professional. So because I had been around after school and had met people, there was an opportunity that I had through my networking to where I was able to be hired on to that after school network. And when I worked for UAN, so much of my after school knowledge came from Boys and Girls Club programming only and Boys and Girls Club culture. But when I was able to work for UAN and visit different programs around the state, my eyes were open to see different types of programming and what quality programming could look like on a different level. So I went from working in the city to visiting people in rural Utah, going down to the Four Corners region, visiting after school programs on the reservation and seeing the impact that people could have with similar frameworks, but just a different way of going about it. And a big credit to that was it's the school age program quality assessment tool that's used by the Weikart Center. So being trained in that tool and being able to provide observations and see it through that lens really helped me understand what programming was. And so then COVID hit 2020. I was sitting at home and I was tasked with providing technical assistance to people around the state that were providing emergency childcares for frontline workers during the months of April and May. And I felt like the work that I was trying to do for them felt incomplete. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing anymore because I had never worked to provide services to people in a pandemic. And then later that year, that 2020, I received a call from somebody that was on my caseload who is now my boss. Her name is Liz Rich. And she told me that they had this grand idea of opening this new after school program and applying for funding in the middle of COVID through TANF. And so we received this money. I was hired on to work for YouthCity and open this brand new after school program. And then we were in limbo for a year and a half because of COVID and all the things. So fast forward now, we've been in the ropes for almost 3 school years now. We're running an after school program. It's been great. But I think to my why, if I can circle back a little bit, when I first started in my career, I think my why related a lot to relationships and individualized relationships with kids and families. As I've gotten older, especially now in this sort of rotation of providing direct service and running programs, it's expanded a little bit in the sense of now it's creating community and creating a place for people to come and feel safe and have those connections. And the relationships still come, but now it's me teaching my staff how to provide those relationships for the kids. And then I am trying to help establish and facilitate this community within our space that we have. And so even though we're a part of Salt Lake City, a part of the city, we're a large organization, our program still feels very siloed and very, I wouldn't say small or unsupported, but like we're in our own little island in our corner of Salt Lake City. So yeah, that's kind of my story.
Thanks for all of that. Yeah, again, I mean, one of the things that we definitely see in this field is such variation in the career journeys and the career paths and the entry points and, and what that all looks like. And yet there are some similarities in doing these, all of the interviews. And I'm sure we'll find out more when we look at all of the data, the many thousands of youth serving professionals. But, there's there's sort of like the hook, like what is that first job or that first volunteer experience or something that kind of, gets you into it, and movement along the way, and maybe some kind of, schooling, formal schooling along the way that kind of supports it. So, there are definitely commonalities and all this great variety, which, is, I think, an asset to the fields, and definitely, there's kind of a back and forth between the fields, and, families and youth have a, big variety of needs, and staff can respond to that in a really flexible way. And so it kind of works together really nicely. And yet we also need to support the workforce, in a very intentional way. But yeah, so thank you for sharing all that about your journeys. And yeah, so we can pivot a little bit and talk about like what supports have been helpful to you along your journeys, or what do you feel like maybe hasn't been there that would have been helpful? So as we, really want to help people have sustained careers, like what are those things that, help retain people in the field? I think we think of things like good pay and benefits and a positive work environment, some kind of training, professional development that supports you, opportunities for growth, maybe resources to support well-being, of course, the sustainability of a program that you're with and the financial health of that, support for leadership and, things like, so are there things that as you think back on your journey so far in the fields, what has helped you? Has there been anything that has kind of like really been a support or gotten you to a next place? And at the same time, feel free to answer, things that maybe you wished you have had that you haven't. And I don't know, Drina, if you want to take that question on first.
Well, in terms of things that were positive, I have to say that Rockland County, New York, has been the greatest asset for Chiku Awali. The Youth Bureau in particular, the staff there, the Arts Council, people who have supported our efforts since we started. And they support it with capacity building grants, they support it with dollars, but they also support it with technical assistance. When I started out, I had a real understanding of administration. You run a prison, 500-bed prison, so you really understand that, but it's on a state level, so on a governmental level. So moving to a not-for-profit, it was a little different. There were things that I didn't know about, the 990s that had to be completed, the fundraising that was not at all and still is not my forte. But people have, shown us, okay, you can go to this resource to be able to have someone help with fundraising, or you can go to this resource. Believe it or not, SCORE was one of the places that we went to learn how to put together a business plan, same thing for a not-for-profit organization to try and, figure that out. How to get, I'm sorry, I got distracted for a minute. How to get like TechSoup, which is an organization that helps you get funding, get products, So people have just been very helpful with information throughout these 20 years, and they're still providing those services. Like I said, my thing is to really shout out to Rockland County for their vision to see that an organization of our kind, which is kind of different, it's about dance, and sometimes people feel that this is not as important in an out of school type program or an enrichment program. So they're seeing what work we do and how it has an impact on the population and on the community. I can't say enough of praise for them. And then NEA too, because we got our first grant.
That is super exciting. Yeah.
The arts is first this past year. So yeah, when people help with their dollars, that's critical. That's important. You know, if it's the state giving you money, you know, without you having to write the grants, that's great. But it's something that we do have to do, and that's a challenge. I'm the sole administrator for the organization, so if we had funding that could come in where we could hire people, which is not something usually happens, we usually get program funding, but funding to hire administrators, to hire people who do the books, you know, accountants and people like that. A lot of times they're not providing that, and um, we do not charge a lot of money for our services. In fact, we follow HUD, so we're dedicated to low to medium income families. So that means that money is always an issue. And I assume it's an issue for a number of not-for-profits that are providing, you know, out-of-time school services. So that's pretty much, yeah, that's what is hard for us. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, you know, you've talked in other conversations we've had, about, you know, sort of some things that would make it just that, like you said, it's just you trying to do all this. And so, you know, grants can be kind of complicated and you're trying to like figure out how to fill that out the right way and what information you need. And it can feel like hoops to jump through to get funding. And so you know, that I think is a challenge to point out. You're not the only one who feels that, I think. And likewise, not the only one who feels like it's hard to get money for staff. And again, that you know, volunteer your time and to, you know, think about sustainability of your program. Like, well, what would it take to sustain this program? And, you know, and how do you find that kind of financial support in order to sustain it? So yeah,
that's
thank
critical.
you.
That's critical.
Yeah. How about you, Angel, with just like resources in the field that have either, you know, been there for you and helped along your way, or things that you'd like to see?
Sure. Yeah. I think thinking about my career path early on, especially when it felt like I think right now I'm in a good spot and I think I'm going to sit here for a minute. But prior to this, I think it's having people to believe in you. So as you're coming up, especially for me, because I was so young, there was a lot of people that I looked to as mentors and as sort of inspirations as to who I wanted to be and the kind of person that I wanted to be as a provider of services to kids and the community. So I think early on, I don't know if it was necessarily a function or a formal thing, but it was people putting me up for opportunities that were formal opportunities that I could either work on skills, or they gave me the motivation to go after something that I maybe didn't think I was ready for, but it's worked out so far. I think now later in my career, there is a work group here in Utah, I guess in the northern part of Utah. We call it the Salt Lake Area Regional Network. So it's a bi-monthly meeting where providers from all over the county will come together and we'll talk about common issues. So I think having a formal opportunity to network with other providers that are experiencing similar things in programming or serving similar populations, and being able to connect and talk about our funding or talk about how hard hiring is right now in the culture in the state, and being able to work together as an organization to try to figure out solutions for these problems has been very beneficial. One of the things that we've seen is there's been some years where this committee has received funding from the state network, but there's other years where there is no funding for that state network. So I think being able to have something that's formal, that can bring people together, that can provide opportunities maybe outside of their direct organization, opportunities for PD and for networking are very beneficial, because since the world of after school is so small and out of school time is so small, we all know each other. There's somebody on this call that used to work for this organization before I was even here. So I think with that, being able to share opportunities and share staff, and know that there's somebody maybe not in my organization that's ready for this position, but I know somebody at the next organization that's ready to come in, and being able to have those opportunities. So I think I feel pretty lucky, being able to have stuck it out for this long. And starting at 18 years old and now being where I am, 12 years later and still doing the same kind of work. There's not a lot of people that have made it through as long as I have that I've seen. So that's kind of my focus right now is, like the 20-year-old kids that I have working for me now, how can I keep them in this field if I see potential and promise with them? So having the formal opportunities to do something like that or to create networks outside of this bubble just helps people feel more connected and like they're a part of something bigger. So I think going back to that community aspect of it, this is also part of that community too. Being on a national call with different providers and funders and people that do this work, that's been, I think, what has been most beneficial. So answering the call, jumping in for opportunities, and being willing to say yes, as long as it aligns with, what the work that we're doing and that we feel passionately about.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think one of the things that I'm hearing you say is, and that I think is worth just underlining, is that opportunities for growth are, very important and may not be within just one organization. So it might be you have to move to a different organization to get those opportunities. And so how, as a field, can we really, think about it broadly? What are those growth opportunities and how can we all be working together and all, training staff and elevating staff, together. So I think that's a really interesting perspective that you kind of bring with you to the work. Great. Well, I think there are maybe a few questions that have surfaced in the chat. So I'm going to try to call those out if I can, but I apologize if I've missed them, but I see one question about how you've seen the needs and interests of youth evolve since you've started, and how has that impacted your practice and programming? I mean, in that time, there's been a pandemic, but there's also, just been a lot of years. And a follow-up, if I didn't say this part already, how have these needs and interests impacted youth workers that you interact with? Like, have you seen, something about the staff too? Just kind of an interesting question. Does anybody want to take that on?
Well, I'll just say very quickly, what I've seen over the years is that is at times, I think sometimes parents get so busy that they do not necessarily bring their children out to some enrichment programs. Now, the after school programs that operate on a daily basis, there's a need there because parents are working, etc., and it's hard to get programming for the children right after school. But for enrichment programs that are on the weekend, I'm finding that Zoom and other kinds of things has decreased the number of young people that we can actually pull into in-person programs. So that's what I've seen over the years, because when we started, we had many more children that would come out and participate in programs, particularly on a Saturday or even a Sunday. But now it has reduced in numbers the children that will come out, particularly on the weekends. But we still get them, but it's just over the years, it has diminished.
Yeah, I think technology plays a big part in that. Absolutely. I would agree with you, Dorina. When I first started, it seemed like programs were so full and there was so many people. I think not to blame everything on COVID, but COVID was a big part of that. Especially in our state, there was a lot of organizations that had to let people go, which means that they had to let kids go, and we haven't been able to fill those spots back up. As well as hire back those people that we had, pre-COVID. One of the things that I've really noticed, because I started with YouthCity in the middle of COVID, And now it feels like we're out of it, still kind of shaky. But prior to this school year, or maybe even this summer, it felt like people were still locked inside themselves, and it was hard for people to come out and sort of maybe not be more outgoing, but just like be sociable and be willing to interact and engage. And like my team, they make fun of me because I have this thing where I want us all to walk out of the building together, like, hey, wait for me, don't leave without me, and so it's little things like that, I think, that we're more willing to do, and that's what really brings the community back into the building that we're in. I think as far as the kids go, because our program, it's not as big as programs used to be, which means that it's smaller and we can really focus more on kids' direct needs. And so it's not so much individualized attention, but it's more of a micro sort of level of looking at the kids and their needs and how we can support them as a community. So one of the things that I feel like has helped us in our program is that we have a lot of cushion within our program. So there isn't one staff member that's running activities constantly by themselves all day. We have a model right now where staff are paired up, and so they have a co-teacher with them. They'll take turns leading classes, they'll take turns planning classes. So it doesn't feel as heavy as it once was. And I think that is really helping us in terms of just keeping energy up and helping staff feel like they can be engaged fully, because they're not always on, and so there's times where they can hang out and really make those connections with the kids. And not have to be worried about whether or not the art project is going to be completed, within this hour, or if the glitter is being spilled. Like there's other things that we can focus on more intentionally within our programming. I think as far as the kids go, kids just need a place to be, kids to feel safe, and a place to have that energy and be loose and not really worry about negative impacts of things that could happen. And kids will be kids, and there's going to be interactions that happen that might feel negative, but that's what our job is, to help facilitate those and find the like a positive way to work through those things that are coming up for them. So that's my take on that question.
Great. Yeah, how about a big one as we kind of are coming to a little bit the end of our time. Anything, what do you think should be done to improve the experience of professionals in the youth fields? What kind of recommendations do you have as you're thinking about that? I mean, I will highlight some of the things that really surfaced from all the interviews that we did. I mean, people were pretty unanimous in their speaking about the need for increased funding for programs and using that funding for staff salaries and increasing salaries and benefits, along with really expressing a need for recognition and need to feel that this work is more valued than perhaps people feel right now. And a need to support, make sure that the workforce is prepared and has the training and support and things, like that they need as well. So those were kind of, I think, the high level, across the board recommendations. But what would you all say to that question of just kind of what recommendations do you have to improve, the experience of professionals?
That's a big question.
I know.
I think really looking at my experience, and maybe like the experience of young people that are coming into the field that we want to keep. After school has been known as a stepping stone for a lot of people, whether they want to be school day educators or social workers or rec workers or correctional workers. But it's because of how I don't know, I don't want to say how small it is, but it seems like there's limited opportunity. And like for us, for example, our organization, we have maybe 80 frontline instructors is what we call them. And then, beyond their position, there's only 3 opportunities for growth for them. Mm-hmm. So figuring out how we can professionalize the frontline work. And I know asking for benefits is hard for part-time employees, and maybe that's more of an organizational thing. But figuring out how to provide more opportunities for PD networking and growth within this specific field when we are 18 to 23 years old, and figuring out how we can get those people to buy into this work. I think that's what could be more beneficial. It's tricky.
Yeah, well, absolutely. A need to support both those kind of new to the fields and young, and their different needs, and maybe people who are further along in their career. But like, we need to be looking at all of it and what kind of supports are needed.
Yeah, I think you also have to invest in training for these individuals so that they can, in fact, move up in the ranks. As I said, because of my background and being in the correctional services field, there is a career ladder. Whereas when I look at the after school programs, I don't see necessarily the same career ladder. So you have to develop more training opportunities, more advancement opportunities for those individuals if you want to keep them in the field. Otherwise, they're going to come to other types of fields where there's more security, where there's better pay, where they're going to be able to advance. So you really have to think about those three elements in order to get individuals to stay in the field.
Yeah, that's great. And how about sort of more specifically about that issue of recognition and respect for the field and for the workforce, and seeing it as like a viable career. What are your thoughts on that? I'm interested, like, either what your own experience has been, like, what do you feel like your work is valued? Like, what do you see as far as colleagues or other people in the fields, and what do you think might, assuming the answer is kind of either there are at least some circumstances in which this work is not as valued, like what would help?
I know for me, I have received a number of recognitions from my community for the work that Chiku Awali is involved in and what we do. I think it's important. I love to be recognized. That's why I invited my daughters to be on the call today so that they could say, "Oh, Mom, you did a lousy job," if that's what they want to say. Or whatever. But it is important to recognize people for the work that they do. And if you're not doing that, that's something that is absolutely needed, because, besides the pay, besides the advancement, you do need to be able to know that you are valued. And that is critical in any field, to know that you're valued, that what you bring to the table has an impact on not only your life, but the life of others. So yeah, it's definitely something that's needed.
I would agree. Recognition does feel nice. And I think it comes at different levels too. Part of my responsibilities is talking to families and talking to parents. And unfortunately, my staff don't get to do a lot of that. But I think it's one of the most important recognitions we can get. When parents are saying, "Thank you for this, you don't know how much this helps me," or, being that we're so young and we have our lifers now that we know. And so I hear those praises from the families, and I reiterate it to my staff, but I think it's a little bit different because it goes through me instead of through the family directly. So it's beneficial. So that's like the micro level, but then also seeing the recognition at the state level and then at a national level, and being able to share my story on calls like this, it's also very helpful. So it's, how do we get more people like this to be able to share their story and talk about what they do and why they do it, and being able to know that they have that platform and are able and willing to share that voice is powerful. And part of the struggle is, I think, that because we do have a lot of young people that are working in the field that are just starting out, we're also looking for our voice and figuring out what that means and how to use our voice to the potential that it has. And that doesn't come as quickly as it does to some people. But I think that's part of the motivation that we can give. And you know, like as administrators or as people in positions of power, we can present those opportunities to these young people to feel like they have those opportunities as well. So just finding more opportunities for growth, and also putting people up on the pedestal and letting them know that this is their time to shine, and that they deserve it.
You know, you mentioned mentors. That's something else that is really important, and that's in any field. You know, go and if you have to, look for a mentor, or you know, try and make sure that there's someone in your profession that you can emulate in many ways, so that if you see them at the top of their field, you'll be able to understand what it is that they've done, what do they do in order to get there. So even if you don't have a formal mentor, shadow someone. Try and figure out how they are getting the job done that you aspire to do. So it's critical to have someone that you're, if it's not called a mentor and you want to call it something else, that's fine. But there's someone that you have to emulate in order to move and advance in your career field.
Yeah, that's an important point. And yeah, absolutely. Mentors and recognition. And Angel, you're humble and have not yet pointed out that you're an after-school ambassador with the After-School Alliance as well. So that, you know, that was just another piece of your you know, journey so far. That has been some nice recognition, and I'm sure also gave you some good experience too. So I will just pause a minute and see if anybody in the audience has any last questions, and then can turn it back over to Kathleen and or Rebecca to kind of close us out. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions pop up. So I will just say thank you so much from me to our panelists.
Thanks, Betsy. Terrific conversation. I had one question maybe we could close out with, which is sort of the ongoing need for the field to understand and face and acknowledge and dismantle the way that systemic racism infects everything we do. And there's certainly components of that show up in people's journeys, professional journeys, and opportunities and potential and access to resources. And I wanted both of you, if you want, to comment on what you think are some issues / solutions, things that need to happen.
Another big one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big question. I think I'll share a story to sort of guide my thoughts here. We do a curriculum where we focus on social justice. And this is an 8-week curriculum that we develop in-house. And for each week, we develop a different sort of aspect or focus of social justice. So one week it's civil rights, the next week it's food rights, then disability rights, then animal rights, and then LGBTQIA plus rights, so many different things. And last year, you know, still feeling the effects of 2020 and the riots and everything that was happening that year. One of our activities was creating not necessarily picket signs, but like a call to action or something on a canvas that kids would decorate and write a slogan or something. So a lot of kids selected to write Black Lives Matter on their things, and they decorate them. They were very nice. But then we had one student, a young lady, that wrote All Lives Matter on her canvas. And when I walked in the room, she said, "Look, Angel, mine says All Lives Matter, and I'm right." And I think, you know, like that was for me because of the culture and how everything was in terms of society at a national level. It was kind of shocking and alarming to have this in my program and feel kind of uncomfortable about this interaction, you know. But I think because of the space that we have and the space that we created and her being able to share that and share her perspective, but also being able to teach her and talk about the impacts that comments like that have, that's the purpose of our program. So we're able to have those hard conversations. We have the structure and the formality to do it. And it doesn't feel like we're necessarily scolding her or telling her that she's wrong, but it's more of an educative thing as to how this impacts kids in our program, kids in our community. Maybe it doesn't impact you directly at home, but this is how it impacts us on a larger scale. So I think being willing to talk about these things in program and also training staff on how to handle those situations when they do come up, because staff could be easily reactive and shun her for writing something like that or tell her that she's incorrect and this is why she's incorrect. But we have the structure to do it in a different way that's not like that, and that still helps her feel safe and that she can be who she needs to be when she's here around us. So I think it's just not shying away from it and being able to see it head on and tackle it when it comes up.
I'll be very quick. I know it's time for us to close. Because Chiku Awali is the type of organization that it is, when people come, they are learning more about who we are as a people, about cultures, even different cultures, because we are in this county have a number of different cultures here. We have Haitian Americans, we have African Americans, we have Black Americans. And when you come together to interact, the more you do that, the more that people will see that there's no place for racism. There's no place for any of the isms, so to speak, in our world and in our society. So the more that people come out, the more that people interact with who you are in the different cultural settings that are available, those issues hopefully are lessened.
Yeah, thanks for that. There's so much to talk about, so much to say. I've learned so much from all of you just in this short hour. Deeply appreciate you coming here and sharing your wisdom. And I hope this isn't the last time that we get to talk with you, for sure. Thank you to everybody who is here. And thanks, Betsy, for your terrific moderation. Sorry for going 1 minute over, but I think that was worth it. Happy holidays in whatever way you celebrate. Hopefully everybody's going to get a chance to take a little bit of rest and get some rejuvenation over the next couple of weeks. We will be back Friday, January 19th, and we will be talking about the Power of Us survey. So please join us then. We'll see you soon. Happy New Year.